How difficult is it, really, to understand another person's true character? I imagine you've faced this question yourself, perhaps in the quiet discomfort of a first date, or the unease of a business negotiation, or even while bantering across a table with an old friend. Consider how often we are called upon, sometimes on the spur of the moment, to judge whether someone is honest, kind, reliable, self-serving, or even dangerous. And yet, what are we actually looking at? Who are we truly seeing? There's a peculiar tension in these encounters, as if we're constantly peering through fogged glass, hoping to distinguish the genuine contours of a soul, but seeing only fleeting, ambiguous silhouettes. Reflect for a moment on your day, the hurried barista who greets you with mechanical cheer, your colleague whose smile doesn't quite reach their eyes, or the stranger who offers you directions in the rain with unexpected warmth. We wade through a stream of appearances, greetings, reassurances, and apologies, but what do any of these gestures really reveal? Our lives are thick with masks and roles, with politeness ritualized into a kind of social armor. Think about it. How often do you present only a fraction of your actual feeling, tailoring your responses to meet the expectations of a moment? Do you ever catch yourself slipping into a script, saying what should be said? If so, what makes you believe others don't do the very same? And yet, in the midst of all this daily theater, each of us shares a quiet hope to know someone truly and to be known in return. We hunger for genuine connection, not just because trust fuels cooperation or friendship, but because there is something extraordinary in those rare, crystalline moments when another's sincerity shines through. We long for the anchors of certainty in a shifting social landscape, for gestures and words that can be trusted without having to be tested. But how do we find such clarity? Is it only the domain of trained psychologists or seasoned judges, those who claim expertise in reading people? Absolutely not. The crucial and perhaps surprising truth is that the ability to discern character doesn't require arcane training, intuition, or magical insight. It requires, instead, an unhurried curiosity and the willingness to really look, to notice what is usually overlooked. Think of observation as a skill, a muscle, if you will, that can be intentionally exercised and refined by anyone. Often, it's the simplest, most ordinary behaviors that yield the deepest insights into what someone truly values and who they really are. Let me suggest something radical. If you become better at reading the subtle, often silent clues that people send into the world, your relationships, whether professional, romantic, or friendly, can be transformed. Not only that, but your own sense of identity will sharpen. You will, in a sense, become more real to yourself, less at the mercy of wishful thinking or misunderstanding. Imagine how your choices might shift if you knew who was reliable before they dropped the mask, or how you could offer yourself more honestly, no longer stooping to hide your better intentions behind self-protection. I want to invite you along on a brief exploration. This isn't a lesson in cynicism, nor is it a guide to manipulation. It's a conversation, one that asks you to notice, to test, and perhaps even to trust again, but only those things that deserve your trust. Today, I'll offer two powerful practical clues for understanding character, drawn not from the abstract pages of philosophy, but from the living, breathing world around us. These are patterns you can use not just to assess others, but to reflect on your own hidden motives as well. So, do you think you're ready to see with new eyes? Are you open to the possibility that a simple shift in what you pay attention to could turn the dimmest, most confusing interactions into moments of sharp revelation? Sometimes, understanding another's character is as easy as watching how they treat the invisible people in the room, or how they respond to adversity when nobody else is watching. Other times, it demands patience and humility, a willingness to see more and assume less. Throughout this exploration, I urge you to hold your judgments lightly and your curiosity tightly. The work of understanding character is, at heart, a labor of hope. The hope that people can be known, that trust is possible, and that in turning our attention outward, we might ultimately find ourselves drawn to a deeper honesty within. Let's begin by searching for those simple, everyday signs. Let's see what emerges when we look beneath the surface, and what we might discover, both about others and about ourselves. Have you ever paused to notice how someone acts when all eyes are off them, when they stand before another human being who cannot offer anything in return? It might sound trivial at first, but if we quietly observe these moments, the world's subtleties suddenly sharpen into focus. Think for a moment about the last time you went to a restaurant. The server glides to your table, hands steadied by routine, eyes scanning faces for approval or reproach. Did you see how your companion greeted them? Did they manage a brief, non-committal nod, or did they offer a smile, a simple acknowledgement of shared humanity? These are small acts, almost invisible, yet they are the first indicator we have of something deeply rooted, the real substance of another's character. Social psychology offers us a clear mirror. When power dynamics tilt, the facade drops. People can act polite or generous when they see benefit in return, but the moments of asymmetrical exchange, where the other holds no promise of reward, strip away incentive. What remains then? Is it the easy arrogance of one who revels in their status, the impatient sigh of a shopper toward a tired cashier, or the practiced courtesy of someone who sees the dignity in everyone, no matter the context? Let's linger with a few everyday vignettes and hold them up to the light. Picture a business leader at a conference dinner, perfectly charming with their peers, then brusquely snapping orders at the hotel staff. Or imagine standing in a grocery line, watching a shopper become frustrated with the elderly clerk struggling with the register. Voices tighten, gestures sharpen, the mask slips. Now, contrast these images with quieter acts. A passenger who gently thanks the bus driver by name, a bystander who notices a lost tourist's confusion and pauses to help despite a busy schedule. It's tempting to dismiss these encounters as insignificant, the stuff of courtesy manuals and etiquette guides. But let's ask ourselves honestly, can a person's reaction in such fleeting moments really reveal so much? It seems they can. Every choice in these moments is a side door into authenticity. Who are we for those who owe us nothing? How do we behave when our actions will not echo back in applause or tangible gain? There is a reason why arrogance and contempt tend to flare up in such situations. Psychological studies show that those who rely on status or external validation are most invested in reinforcing power hierarchies. Their impatience with servers or shopkeepers may be a desperate clutch at self-worth, a brittle mask over deep-seated insecurity. On the other side, empathy, real, unperformative empathy, marks emotional maturity. It means recognizing another's vulnerabilities and responding with care, not because it is expected, but because it simply feels right. Politeness, too, is not just a mechanical gesture. It can be a practiced virtue, a conscious discipline. Each time we choose to treat someone with dignity, especially when it doesn't matter, we strengthen a kind of ethical muscle. This muscle, quietly exercised over years, eventually shapes our reactions even in the most challenging situations. What then should we look for in our interactions and those of others? Pause the next time you witness someone interacting with a person in a service role. Do they look them in the eyes or glance away as though the other were invisible? Do they show patience when there's a mistake, or is their frustration palpable? And, perhaps most importantly, how do you act when you are tired, rushed, or disappointed? Do you default to courtesy, or does irritation win out? It's easy to tell ourselves that we are fundamentally decent, that we reserve our true kindness for those closest to us. But the reality is more complex. Our character is painted in brush strokes, formed by 1,000 tiny details. When the stakes are low, when nothing is to be gained, what we do in these moments says more than grand gestures in times of spectacle. So, make it a practice to gently interrogate your own behaviors. Ask yourself, did I show respect just now, even when no one was watching? Did I give the same warmth to the cleaner as I did to my boss? Am I training myself to see and honor the full humanity of those who cross my path, no matter their status or ability to repay me? Ultimately, being attentive in small interactions is not about perfection, but about pattern. It is about learning to catch ourselves in the act of sleepwalking past the vulnerable and instead waking up to see, to respond, and to remember that true character is revealed not when the world is watching, but when there is only the silent witness of our own conscience. As we peel back another layer in our search for what really grounds our trust in another person, a second crucial clue emerges, one that glimmers not in grand gestures or sweeping declarations, but in something much humbler and arguably more revealing: the way we keep our promises, or fail to. Have you ever noticed how much weight a simple "I'll call you tomorrow" can carry, or how your sense of someone's character shifts, sometimes subtly, sometimes dramatically, when they do or do not do as they said? There's a psychological significance here that runs as deep as any of our philosophical questions about what it means to live well with others. Albert Bandura, a pioneer in social learning theory, showed us how behaviors, especially those tied to honor and obligation, become embedded in our sense of self. When we keep our word, even in the smallest matters, we reinforce our own integrity. The promise you make to show up for coffee at 3 p.m. might, in the grand scheme of things, seem trivial. But what is a relationship or a business partnership if not the accumulation of such trivialities? Every act of reliability communicates respect, not just for the other party, but for yourself. It silently says, I matter enough to myself to be consistent. You matter enough to me to be trusted with my word. Too often, we evaluate promises on a scale of significance. That was just a little promise, we might rationalize. It's not as if I broke a contract or a wedding vow. And yet, isn't it the small, almost invisible stitches that hold the larger fabric of trust together? Think of a friend who consistently arrives on time, or a colleague who always makes the effort to clarify expectations before a deadline. Over months and years, the reputation that grows is not built on the few extraordinary vows they fulfilled, but on the reliably met minor commitments. The magnitude of the promise may vary wildly. A borrowed book returned as quickly as promised, deliverables handed in promptly, even remembering a shared inside joke. But it is the consistency that forges credibility, not the size of any particular act. Still, life is not orderly, and our paths are crowded with unforeseen obstacles. What happens when, despite best intentions, we cannot live up to a commitment? Here lies the difference between a breach born of necessity and one born of indifference. Consider the scenario. You promise to pick up a friend from the airport. A sudden emergency arises. You cannot make it. When you explain, apologize, and try to find another solution, you signal that you value your promise, even if circumstances forced you to break it. Contrast this with someone who simply forgets, avoids the conversation, or offers only vague excuses. The difference is not merely circumstantial, it's a measure of emotional maturity and respect. Emotional maturity flourishes in the space between our aspirations and our limitations. We all fail. Sometimes we overextend ourselves, making plans while caught up in the optimism of the moment. The mature person does not sweep broken promises under the rug. They confront them, acknowledge the slip, and attempt to repair the breach. There's an honesty in saying, "I said I would, but I didn't, and I'm sorry." Such moments, though uncomfortable, are where genuine trust can actually deepen. But how do we become attentive students of reliability in others and in ourselves? Start small. Notice the little instances when someone follows through. The promised text that arrives, the meeting attended on time, the commitment, however minor, that is honored. Pay attention just as carefully to moments of overpromising, when plans are made in a flurry of enthusiasm, but falter when reality intrudes. How often do you catch yourself saying yes automatically, only to regret it later? Sometimes the impulse to please or fear of disappointing leads us into commitments we cannot or should not make. This brings us to another uncomfortable question. Is it ever justifiable to break a promise? Imagine the classic ethical dilemma. A friend asks for your silence, but speaking up would prevent significant harm. Philosophers and psychologists alike recognize this tension between rigid consistency and higher moral responsibilities. In such moments, kindness and forgiveness, for ourselves and others, become vital counterbalances to the stern ideal of reliability. Perhaps the real indicator of trustworthiness is not absolute perfection, but heartfelt transparency, a willingness to own mistakes, learn, and adapt. Moreover, we cannot ignore the role of cultural norms and context. In some societies, punctuality is a near sacred duty. In others, time is fluid, and a broken promise may carry a different moral weight. Even within our closest circles, expectations are shaped by unspoken rules and habits. Are you judging someone unfairly by your standards, or is their approach genuinely out of sync with the values you hold dearest? So, what does all this mean for you, for us, in the lived reality of relationships? To be reliable is not to be flawless. It's to consistently signal consideration, to repair rather than ignore breaches, and to remember that trust is hard-won through 1,000 ordinary moments. If we want to be trusted and to know whom to trust, perhaps it starts with a habit of everyday truthfulness, chosen again and again, in our smallest promises, and especially in what we do when those promises are hardest to keep. So, let us return, as all roads inevitably do, to those two quiet clues, those slender keys to reading character, how one treats the powerless, and whether one honors even the smallest promises. Think how easily these signs go unnoticed amid the clangor and spectacle of daily life. We are trained, almost unconsciously, to read people by their showmanship, by their manners in public, their witty retorts, their proud declarations of goodwill. But what are these grand gestures when compared to the patient kindness of someone who holds the elevator for a stranger with tired arms, or the simple determination to keep one's word long after the promise ceases to feel exciting? In the soil of everyday interaction, it is there, almost hidden, where true character roots itself. Why do we so often miss these cues? Perhaps because they appear unremarkable. It is easy to praise the hero on the battlefield or the orator before a crowd. It is harder to notice the quiet respect shown to those without influence, or the resolve to honor a forgotten agreement when no one would complain if we simply let it slip away. Yet ask yourself, in moments of raw honesty, when have you felt profoundly seen or valued? Was it in the applause of a group, or in the warm fidelity of a friend who listened without judgment, or a colleague who defended you privately when it would have been simpler to do nothing at all? We might marvel at fireworks, but it is the steady glow of a candle that banishes the darkness night after night. This is why, if we wish to know people, not just acquaintances but deeply, we must become observers of these humble signals. Consider a manager who treats interns with the same dignity she shows to the CEO, or the friend who, after months, remembers your earlier worry and checks in unprompted. These acts cost little, and yet they reveal much. They issue quiet proclamations about what the person values, how they arrange their moral universe. Conversely, one who offers lavish gifts to gain favor but exploits the vulnerable when no one is looking demonstrates a hollow kind of virtue. True character is not confused by circumstance. It emerges consistently, sometimes awkwardly, but recognizably across the mundane fabric of life. Of course, this is not just about sizing up others, as tempting as that can be. There is a subtler, perhaps braver, invitation here to examine ourselves with the same attentive eye. How do you treat those from whom you have nothing to gain? Where, in the ledger of your own days, do promises quietly expire, left unattended and ungrieved? It stings to confront, but such reckoning is the birthplace of integrity. Practice watching yourself the way you would study a character in a novel, noticing patterns that repeat, the habits that shape the story, the moments of quiet nobility or blinkered selfishness that define a life not in one bold gesture, but in 1,000 almost invisible choices. And here is the challenge I leave you with. In the coming days, make it your quiet experiment to observe not just others, but yourself. Look for those moments when someone is unseen and note if you or those around you step in with care or indifference. Notice when a promise is honored, especially when it would be easier to let it fade, and ask yourself, what would I choose? Where, today, does my character quietly declare itself through my smallest action? This mindfulness, this deliberate observation, is not a grim exercise in suspicion or self-policing. Rather, it is a source of connection, a way to live more attentively in family, friendship, work, and even the ongoing conversation you hold with yourself. When you nurture these skills, you deepen your ability to trust, to forgive, to inspire, and most essentially, to grow. You become, over time, the kind of person whom others look to when they themselves wonder what matters most. In the end, these principles do more than help us judge wisely. They urge us to participate more wholly, to build lives threaded through with integrity and empathy. It is easy to be outwardly impressive. It is harder and infinitely more valuable to be quietly good. And so, as you go forth, into meetings and kitchens, onto sidewalks and shared silences, ask yourself, in the stories you are telling and living, what will your small daily deeds one day reveal about your own heart? May that question accompany you gently but persistently as you continue to observe, to learn, and to choose again and again in the silent spaces of your life, to pursue the kind of character you most hope to find in others.